So this is the Temporal Compendium. This is the binders that you brought with you to visit Falcon Space.
These are all the white papers, research papers from people who are not me that I've been basing my work on. Because remember, at the end of the day, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, right?
I would say that we're bridging the gap because there is a ton of physics, a ton of science that has been done, both mainstream as well as speculative, right? By mainstream physicists, by some of the top physicists in the world. Some of it is proven, some of it is conjecture, right? And so it sounds like what you've done is you've collected a lot of these papers and put them in a compendium for warp drive gravity modification stuff.
Yeah, so essentially what my whole thing with this is, don't believe me in the things I have to say, believe the papers that I'm using as my body of supporting literature. And so this is, I don't just print out and bind every paper that I read. No, it's over the past 10 years, there's been certain papers that stick out and relate to one another, and I found them, each one of these I found very useful and particularly relevant to one of the fields. So if we just starting with volume 1, I have just kind of gives like a table of context and contents and everything that was in it. So really, this just gives you I can let you read the
title or just your own brief summary. It's just a quick run through.
Yeah, so it's kind of a cheeky title on my part. In part, it's kind of a joke on Jack calling himself the first Time Lord. This is kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke on that. But the Temporal Compendium, a Time Lord's Guide to the Multiverse. So then this is volume 1. It starts with Maya's paper, which he's flipping through.
Okay, so that's Maya Benowitz.
Yeah, Maya Benowitz's paper, which is she's going to be redrafting anyways. Goes into ultra-terrestrial models by Dr. Hal Puthoff. Goes into the executive after that. It goes into the executive summary of the Tic Tac UFO incident. From there, it goes to UAP flight characteristics by Dr. Kevin Knuth. From there, it's lectures in UAP and metric engineering by Jack Sarfati. And then after that is the lectures on faster than light travel by Dr. Barak Shoshani, and each one of his papers, which are faster than light or time travel paradoxes, multiple histories, wormhole time machines, and multiple histories, time travel paradoxes, and entangled timelines, and then warp drives, rest frame transitions, and closed timeline curves. So this is the overall the introduction lays out the basic framework of the multiverse. The basics of just the hard science of the UAP phenomenon. There has been a phenomenon interacting with the current population of Earth. We don't know what it is. Here's what it could be based on what we know about it, and then that goes into some of the actual cases that we had. Like Kevin Knuth's paper, which I know you've read. Then lectures on UAP metric engineering from Jack. It just kind of gives just a broad overview to say this is the way to go.
Well, and I'm familiar with several of these papers already, so I guess one thing I would ask before I go any further is there a way that people could get this list, right? Have you thought about doing this as a PDF and then linking to these papers online?
Yeah, so I do have a Google Drive that has all of these. They're not organized right now. I'm working on it, but they're all there, and then some other ones that I haven't gotten around to yet.
Okay.
These are the main body. So all of this is in the public literature. None of this is, everyone can find this.
Yeah.
So it is out there. It is. I do have it collected on a drive. I can, if you remember, I can try to email you the drive so you can link it to people and stuff, and we can figure that out. That's volume 6. So volume 2. So volume 2 is Black Holes, Entropy, and Many Worlds. It goes to the work of Bekenstein, Jacobson, Carroll, and David Deutsch. Opens up again, table of contents. The first paper in it is going to be The Quantum Physics of Time Travel by Dr. David Deutsch, which Shoshani's work is based in. So it almost kind of very much recaps what a lot of these were for, because a lot of these are. They are organized in a way they should read semi-naturally for people that are already versed in physics as you go from one volume to another. It starts with David Deutsch's papers. Then it goes from David Deutsch's papers. It goes into black holes. Now, black holes are important for several reasons. I'm not going to get too deep into that because that's its own lecture on its own. You can find all these pictures because this is all based in black hole thermodynamics, the entropy of black holes, right? Because it's through entanglement entropy of a quantum system that we can derive out general relativity. Okay, so it goes through, it lays out very pretty explicitly the structure of the quantum multiverse, the many worlds, how it relates to black holes, and then how we can derive general relativity out. So coming out of black hole dynamics, actually there's a really good graph on the paper called All Objects and Some Questions, which is actually a very recent paper, and I'm not going to pull it up because you can probably find a graphic of it online, and you'll find that on the black hole line is the Hubble radius. So the observable universe, it seems, is probably some type of black hole, or at least there's an event horizon associated with it, and then there's the physics that come out of the event horizon, the entropy from that. We're not going to get too deep into that. So the observable universe is analogous to a black hole, how the multiverse relates to that, and then it ends going through Sean Carroll's work with 19, Escape from a Black Hole with a Spherical Warp Drive, which is a 2021 paper by Dr. Barak Shoshani, by Dr. Yuri Eroshenko, who basically says that you can use a warp drive to escape from a black hole. Now, he goes on to introduce the WD equals EPR conjecture in that paper too, and this will, Jack actually, he very much liked this paper. When I sent it to him, it's complementary to his claims that warp drives are I think he calls them entanglement escalators is what he calls them, but they're essentially entanglement machines, because again, without going too deep into the physics, when you're doing this emergent general relativity, any structure in general relativity can be viewed as a semi-classical approximation of some larger entanglement structure. So that's just kind of going out from there. This is volume 3 goes more, has the evolution of Benowitz's papers, her early long version, the version he's reading right now, and then it goes into, let's see, it has Schrodinger's 1952 transcript, what I was saying about when he first started taking seriously the notion that the multiverse might be a thing before Everett wrote his papers, and then it starts going into some stuff, it goes into Max Tegmark's paper, somehow like Lenny Susskind's work, and I also include the recent papers from the Dark Energy Survey and Nanogravity, where their very recent observations, like within the last 6 months of this recording, that show that black holes might be a dark energy species, and that the cosmological constant, dark energy, may not be a constant. It might vary with time, which are predictions that Benowitz makes from her equations, which are based in her version of the multiverse. She used basically she goes from the Dirac equation instead of a Schrodinger equation. There's reasons why you want to use Dirac, because it works with relativistic and regular Schrodinger doesn't. That's getting a little bit high level probably for this talk, so that's what this one goes into. Now, because we've already established the formalism in these of how the multiverse works, what the dynamics of it are going to be, how the map, I call it mapping the multiverse, is what I have the folder on my computer is labeled, and from here on, so for these first 3, it's painting the picture that the multiverse exists, we can get general relativity out of it, and that warp drives are the mechanism that you need to use in order to travel between the different eigenstates of the wave function. From there is when we go to volume 4, which actually gets into Alcubierre's paper, written in '94, and the derivatives of it. So where it goes from him to Notario to White's paper, and then it just starts going into like some of Lenz's paper, and where they go into positive warp drives only. And so then this starts to paint a pretty good picture of warp drive, the last 30 years of warp drive physics. Going into volume 5, this is where I start going into the work of Sal Pais, Jack Sarfati, a little bit more in depth, Harold Puthoff, and some of his work that came out of the OSAT programs with the space-time propulsion based on vacuum. Space-time metric engineering or vacuum polarization. which actually it starts with this vacuum polarization paper, and then it goes into the advanced propulsion from the polarized vacuum. So this is a different way, a different but equivalent way that we can look at to general relativity, but it might be more friendly to engineers. It goes from there into, I haven't made a table of contents for this yet. Goes into some Sarfati's work, then into his the warp reactor concept from Lawrence Livermore that is partially basing. They're using some of Jack's work, which actually, if you read in the context of Pais's papers on his fusion, on his design for fusion, they're very analogous. They're right next to each other, so there can be a cross pollination there. Let's see, what else did I have in this one? Oh yeah, and then this also starts getting into graphene, so the Schwinger limit, graphene, mesoclipic Schwinger effect in graphene, how graphene can be tuned to be either a superconductor or an insulator, depending on. Now, why am I including all this in graphene? Why am I including all of this stuff on graphene? I am a firm believer that, especially with the anomalous effects that we are seeing from graphene and all these, it seems useful for a lot of things. We just haven't scaled the production of it yet. A lot of these ships, I suspect, will be 3D printed and graphene-based metamaterials. Okay. So it might the whole thing is not going to be graphene, but the superstructure of it might be 70% graphene, and then it's doped with other materials to get certain, So there are a lot of complexities and caveats that go on with this, but that is the way that this is probably going to go and will be the most economical. Going into volume 6, I start going into some of the actual DIRD, the Defense Intelligence Research documents that were put out by OSAP. Actually Harold Putoff's paper on metric engineering was one of those, but I have it in there, not in this, so I don't have a duplicate. But then I also go into I open up with, actually I ripped off the opening first pages of chapter 9 of Jim Lukatsky's new book on the revelations of his book about the LSAT program on the more scientific side. And it was in chapter 9 where he states that, and I quote, "The United States was in possession of a craft of unknown origin," and then kind of goes into some of the specs on it. And he states that 2 of the DIRDs reviewed in this book are of particular importance into explaining some of the aspects observed in UAP UFO design and the performance characteristics. One is negative mass propulsion, and then the other one is the advanced space-time propulsion based on vacuum metric metric engineering, which is the first one in this paper. So according to OSAP, the actual government UFO program, those are the 2 most important research papers that they came up with that pertain directly to the propulsion systems of these, which screams warp drive, and they go and list it more in the papers. And so then after that, I start with Herman Bondy's 1957 paper on how negative mass could be used for propulsion. Start going more into the negative mass propulsion DIRD research paper that's mentioned and by Lukatsky, and let's see. And then I start going into other of the DIRDs that are tangentially very Eric Davis, his papers on warp drives and wormholes and stuff will be in here. Warp drive, dark energy, manipulation of extra dimensions. One's going to be on the another one's going to be on the tomography of negative energy states in the quantum vacuum. Another one's going to be extracting energy from the quantum vacuum. Just things that they themselves have sort of directly related to this. So really, what we end up having here with this cheekily named temporal compendium is you have the rough encyclopedia of what is your friend was saying, what is our best idea to explain UFOs. Well, you have it right here. It's all in the open source. People can go find it. The hard part is putting it all together in one spot, which is part of what I've been doing here.
Yeah, and that's absolutely wonderful. It's wonderful to have a body of knowledge that pertains to this, because I know one of the things that people struggle with is as they start to get interested in this area, where do you begin, right? Who are some of the best physicists to follow? So,
yes.
Yeah, so Daniel, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you.